My name is Ben Pykare. I am a fourth year in the Medieval Institute.
My name is Beattie. I am a fifth year in the Medieval Institute. While there are definitely plenty of history podcasts out there, they tend to deal, I think, with a particular topic. You know, maybe it's talking about the Crusades or talking about a particular part of, I don't know, the Frankish kingdoms, right, or Charlemagne. But I think that those podcasts still leave a lot of questions for audiences about how that work is done.
We've been able to have different scholars on, some who are doing manuscript studies, so they're really focused on kind of the material culture, the objects. We have had on intellectual historians, people who deal more with the history of ideas. We've had on people whose projects were more theological, talking about the history of specifically Christianity and Islam in the medieval period. And we had people who work on stained glass and on physical buildings. And so we've had on different scholars that kind of do very different things that all somehow connect in the Middle Ages, but do very different kinds of work with different kinds of sources and different lines of inquiry. Personally, it's been really helpful for my personal work to get more time speaking with scholars about their recent work and kind of demystifying what being an academic looks like. You know, we see at conferences and we see on bookshelves final products, you know, the fruit of sometimes years of work. And it's intimidating to see a final product and to not know fully the process and to wonder, how do I do that? And so part of this podcast has been great for being able to ask people, okay, so you sit down with sources and then what? And then, you know, like what's the next step? Okay, you want to write a book. Where do you start? How do you define the project? And getting different people's different processes and different answers into those things has been really helpful for me and Will as young scholars, and hopefully if other young scholars, you know, want to listen to the podcast, it would be helpful to them, whatever discipline they are. One of my favorite moments on the podcast was hearing about Professor Berman's most recent book, which was a collaboration to create a textbook for medieval Mediterranean history, which was a big project. And it was fun for him to hear him demystify that process. And it's starting as simple as he saw old colleagues, old friends from his graduate program at conferences, and they said, you know, someone really ought to write this textbook. I really wish I could teach from a textbook that covered this. And then hearing it over the course of 5 to 7 years, they slowly were like, okay, let's us do it. And who wants to do what? And let's sit together and read it out loud to kind of unify the voice. And hearing about these three people, these three friends, you know, in their free time or in the time their universities gave them to perform their research, getting together, collaborating, having conversations, sharing sources, sharing chapters, slowly building this thing together, and then seeing it come together as a finished product in the end was really cool.
Alongside that, with every interview we've done, while yes, we do focus a lot on how people are going about doing their work, a story always comes out of it which really connects history to, you know, the lived everyday experience of the people that are connected to whatever that history is. One of my favorite moments was actually when we were interviewing Dr. Megan Hall at the MI. And she works on the history of women's education in medieval Europe, northern medieval Europe. And she was talking about how she was doing a research trip in the UK a few years ago, and she was traveling around southern England and ended up going to sort of a fairly rural church, and I think ended up getting involved in bell ringing, if I remember correctly. She sort of got involved in some bell ringing, and as she was there, obviously the locals were asking, well, what's she doing here in this kind of leafy, slightly out of the way part of southern England? And she explained that she works on women's education and she was doing some research. And one of the people there asked, oh, could women read in the medieval period? And she just said, well, this was a perfect opportunity, right, where we can have this conversation and I can explain that, yes, absolutely. Women could read, they could write, they were major audiences for particular texts. It seemed to be a hugely important moment for this particular person because it completely changed the way they understood, I suppose in a sense, the role of women throughout history,
yeah.
right? It's this really, really important teaching moment that enables you to re-understand who you are and what your role traditionally has been in history. So it's great to listen to the stories that our guests have because they really remind us that history is a living thing and that all of these objects which we love and we study, they were all created by people living their lives, and they're sort of speaking to us in this quite remarkable way, and we just love sort of sharing that with the audience.
Yeah, we want this to be a project of the Medieval Institute, that we as an institution value sharing the world of medieval studies with the broader public. We have some people I really want to interview. There's some people who practice medieval German martial arts that we've got to meet that I really want to get in front of a mic to talk about medieval German swordplay and how one gets into that and studies that and then practices that. There's a lot of great scholars coming through Notre Dame all the time that we just want to get in front of microphones and share their knowledge and work with as many people as we can.
If there's anything that you in particular would like to learn about the medieval world or about how medieval studies research is done, we'd love to hear from you. You can listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Google Podcasts, we're on... Where else are we on?
We're on Anchor.
We're on Anchor.
.fm.
Yeah.
We're also on the Medieval Institute's website, so if you just type in Medieval Institute Notre Dame, you can look for our most latest episode is also linked there.